So maybe you're new to the Turkish language in general, or maybe you've studied a bit and you think that you completely understand the verb to be and possession in Turkish. But I really think that there are so many things that you've missed out on that are creating major problems for you down the road. So today, my goal is to try to help you understand really how to use the verb to be and possession in Turkish. And there are really some critical things that you might have never noticed, even though they were right in front of you. So first, let's start with the pronouns. We have ben, sen, o, biz, siz, and onlar. So ben simply means I. Sen means you in the singular form. And then we have o. And o means it, he, she, whatever. It's just the third person in general. It can be an object. Now here's where it gets a bit interesting. The biz here is the plural of the first person, as in I, we. And then we have siz. You see, oftentimes when, let's say, a monarch is speaking, they wouldn't say, I did this. I mean, they do sometimes, but oftentimes we is used. This is sometimes referred to as the royal we. As in, when you are respecting someone, you sometimes will pluralize them. And this concept applies in Turkish, as in, when you say to someone that is, for example, uh, a higher rank, perhaps, you would refer to them as siz, like a teacher, perhaps, maybe your parents, maybe a stranger, maybe a client. We'd use siz. So siz is both for plural, second person, for you in the plural, or for respect. And then we have onlar. Now this is a very interesting one. Remember, if you haven't, I recommend that you go back to the second lesson for this point. Remember how we talked about the plural. So if the word was, for example, kedi, which means cat, the plural of it would be kediler. Now, what if it was another word? Let's take the word, which is a nice word. Let's take kalem for pencil. So kalemler. What happened there? Kalemler. Kalemler means pencils. Now here's the fun thing. Here, do you see anything? Anything particularly out of the ordinary? Here we see lar. That's the plural. And then here we see o, he, she. What's this n then? Remember when we talked about the buffers in the second lesson, which if you haven't, please do check it out. It's important. It's very important for you to understand what's going on here. This n, we said ny and s. We said that these are buffers. They are put between vowels, but sometimes in certain vowel endings, even if the following letter is not a vowel, in the case of o, this happens to most grammaticals in general. This is not the exact rule, but this is a rule that if you apply as a foreigner, it can actually solve most problems for you. You not really run into that many problems if you think of it as such. As in, after every grammatical vowel, we're going to put this n. So here, what happened was we took o, he, she, it, and we took lar, plural. Put an n between as a buffer after that o. Now we will see this happen a bit more later on today when we talk about the possession. So, ben, sen, o, biz, siz, onlar. These are the basic pronouns of Turkish. Now, let's start with ben. Let's say I am, let's pick something. Let's say doctor. It's a nice simple word. Ben doktor. Actually, let me take this here. Oof. And systematic. Let me just down, then put it here. Nice. Pretty. Didn't really fit, but okay. Okay. I'm sure that there's some way to do it through Microsoft Word to arrange these lines, but I'm not sure how to do it. Maybe you guys can tell me in the comments. Now, how do I say I am a doctor? Yes, ben here means I. But in Turkish, as we said in the first lesson, we don't want to use words. We want to use suffixes. We want to minimize the amount of words we have. So, doctor, What's this u? This is the vowel based on the vowel harmony in the second lesson. And that means we pick out from the vowels of I, U, and U. I'm not going to go over those vowels again. As I said, if you need that, I recommend they go for lesson number 2 again. And then we have you are a doctor. Once again, we have doctor and sun. So let me just do something here. Let me take pink. That's nice. Actually, no. This is better. Put this in blue. Yes. And now this one. Here, we can, if we choose, we can say o doktor, he's a doctor. Or we can also say o doktordur. This is actually incredibly important. Like, this is actually one of the most important things in today's lesson. As to what it means, yes, it is optional to an extent, as in sometimes you can omit it or put it in the word and it would still make the same sense. So it's not really necessary, but actually is sometimes. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And then we have biz doktor, uz. Siz doktor, sunuz. Onlar doktor, lar, dır. Denoting the plural here is not really necessary since we already denoted it here. But it's nice. It's not a problem. It's okay. We can put it there. But here we see the dir again. As you can see, by the way, what happens to o is the same thing that happens to onlar, just the difference of plural, which we can, if we choose to, omit. Because in the end, o, onlar, they're exactly the same thing. So now that we've looked at an example where we simply used a normal word that ends in a non-vowel, let's see what happens when we choose one that does end with a vowel. Let's write these again. And let me just copy these so that I don't need to keep rewriting them. Nice. Let's pick the word E. Now E means good. Let's just write it here first. Now, the meaning of E, as we said, is good. It can mean good as in as a descriptive term, or it can mean as in I feel good, for example. Same thing. Now, how about the suffixes? Well, this ends with a vowel. And in the verb to be, what we do is we add a buffer. And the buffer is going to be the letter Y. Ben iyiyim. What about this one? Well, the suffix starts with sin. And this is in no way a grammatical vowel. It's just a normal vowel of the words. So we don't need a buffer here. We go to the next one. E is good. Dir. And yes, as we said, this is optional, but it doesn't make it any less important. We're going to see that right after I'm done with onlar. How about us? Biz, e. Okay, the suffix is, as in, let me just color these again. There we go. And yes, basically sun, we just colored these, and these are just based on whatever the vowel ending was. And the same applies here. Okay, but fine, I'll do it nonetheless. The plural was in there, this one. So these are all of the minor vowel harmony, and these are of the major one. And I'll color this one differently. Let's color this one a dark gray. Why not? Now, siz iyisiniz. Onlar iyilerdir. As in, they are good. We can also say onlar iyidir. That's okay. We don't have to put the plural. We can also say onlar iyi. Now, before I do the final one, which is a fıstık shahab ending, I want to bring something to attention. This point of dur here. Why do we use it? Let's write this short. Let's write what? Let's write okay, let's write this one. O doktor iyi. And o iyi doktor. Okay? Now, what's the difference between those two sentences? I'll give you a minute to think about this one. A few seconds. So, we talked in the first lesson about how Turkish is about subject, object, and verb. So, where's the subject of the sentence? Or more specifically, we also said that the most essential part of the sentence is actually the verb. So let's find where the verb of the sentence is, because that's what matters to us the most. I think pretty much, even in colloquial speech, there's almost pretty much always a verb in any sentence, but there's not always a subject and an object. So, here, our verb is i. Let's go with this. And here, our verb is doktor, as in, he is a doctor. Now, can we say o doktor, like we did here? Doktordur iyi. Can we say that? Not really. But depending on the context, maybe. But it does not mean what we want it to mean, because that's not the verb. It has to be o doktor iyidir. Now, can we say o iyi doktordur? Yes. Can we say o iyidir doktordur? No. Once again, because this is not the verb. What do I mean by verb? As in, this is the verb to be, as in it is something. So this doctor is good. This is what the dir here shows us. Okay, this one shows us here o iyi doktordur, as in he. Okay, here he is a doctor. What kind of a doctor? A good doctor. So here this e is actually a adjective, as in he's a good doctor. Whereas here, that doctor is good. Like it's here it is good. Here it is doctor. Now, let me do something different. Let me pick a name. Let the name be Sam. So what if I say, Sam iyidir, doktordur. What does that mean? We said this dir here was the verb to be, as in is. So, when we have is good and is doctor, what does this mean? Here, what this means is Sam's good. He's a doctor. Like here, it's kind of in sequence, as in you're assuming he's a good guy because he's a doctor. Or we can even do it in the reverse. It would mean the same thing. Sam doktordur, iyidir. Sam's a doctor. He's good. Maybe he's good at being a doctor. Maybe he's just a good person. We don't know. So in a sense, these are kind of like two sentences. Do they have to be put in two sentences? No. I mean, especially in colloquial speech, you can have these kind of constructs. It's just basically like saying, I'm going to go to the park and eat. We have two verbs in the same sentence. It's not an issue. But yes, it is in a sense combining two sentences. So this is kind of like saying Sam iyi, Sam doktor. Sam's good, Sam's a doctor. So yes, we can sometimes choose not to put this dir and dur, but that doesn't mean it's any less important, because it actually is incredibly important, because it is the one that shows us where the verb of the sentence is. So if you have too many words, you might want to use this to show the verbs more explicitly. So we have the normal one, we have the vowel, and let's finally finish off with the fıstık shop. Let's pick a word. Let's say I am. It's a nice word. Let's say small. That's a nice word. No, let's say child. Çocuk, child. So, what if I'm saying I'm a child? Well, if you recall, we talked about the logic behind this. We can't have this here anymore. Since we're adding a vowel, çocukum, we can't say that. We have to put a yumuşak G. If you don't know why and you don't understand the logic behind it, I recommend that you go back to the second lesson. What about saying you are a child? Sen çocuksun. This is a consonant. And also, if you notice, it's a fıstık shahab. We don't need to worry about anything. And plus, the S doesn't have any alternatives anyways. But we don't need to worry about changing it to any other letter. But what happens at O? O, çocuk. And then we said dır, right? Or more like dur here, depending on the vowel. O, çocukdur. This is not a fıstık shahab, but it is a consonant. And more specifically, it's one of the consonants that we talked about, that it actually changes to another letter. What did we say it changes to? We said it changes to a T. And then it would be O çocuktur. What about biz? Biz çocuğu. Can we say çocukuz? No. Let's say biz çocuğuz. Okay. What about siz? Siz çocuk sunuz. And onlar çocuk. This is actually an interesting one. Depending on what we decide to put after it, what happens can change. We can say o çocuk. Onlar çocuklar. They are children. Onlar çocuklardır. We wouldn't have to change it because the last letter would be dir, would be R before the D, so there's no issue. So it really depends on what you choose to put there. Now, I was thinking of continuing a bit longer and talking about the possession because there's something very critical there that binds it with this tense, like the verb to be. But I think I've already gone on for too long. And so I want to leave that for the next video, which I'll talk more about possession and talk about something very, very, very special that you can do when you combine these possessions and the verb to be. So if you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to check out some tutoring, you can check out the tutoring site that I work on in the description box down below. And hopefully we will continue the next lesson with the possessions.